Greetings, YouTube. I recently finished watching Luke Cage, a series that I quite enjoyed, and I thought it was kind of interesting they decided to go with the Luke Cage as power broker in Harlem at the end of the series. I thought that was kind of interesting. And because I enjoyed the character played by Mike Coulter so much, um, I thought I would hunt down the episodes that he had done both on Defenders, which is the entire episode series, as well as the 8 episodes he did on Jessica Jones, a series that I otherwise don't have a great deal of interest in. The entire series being based on essentially the torment that one woman went through and like the abuse and her suffering. It leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. You don't need to show that. We get it. I understand enough about that. I don't need to see it in details. Um, and not to mention that that kind of thing happens again and again and again because of the character of Kilgrave. So yeah, not a series I really had a whole lot of interest in myself, but it was kind of cool to see the character of uh, Luke Cage being in that series, and you get the piece all together how the different shows, all 3 of those different shows, how they kind of mesh together, and to get a full scope of what was going on in that series of Luke Cage, you really had to watch the episodes that were from Defenders and for uh, Jessica Jones, because otherwise you're going to have, there were some gaps. If you just watch Luke Cage, you're like, why is this like this? What's going on? Yeah, I was very confused when I went from season 1 to season 2 on Luke Cage. I'm like, what? Didn't he just go to prison? I'm not sure, but yeah. So I enjoyed the whole thing, so it was kind of cool. Well, I can't say I enjoyed everything. One of the things I didn't enjoy was Danny Rand. Now, I used to be a fan of Power Man and Iron Fist when I was younger. I always loved the power set that Luke Cage has, and I think that Mike Coulter has done an incredibly good job at portraying that power set in these, new Marvel series or newish Marvel series. We'll say 21st century Marvel series, um, because it's a really wonderful mid-tier hero power level. He's pretty much physically invulnerable to like most conventional weapons. He's very durable, has a high level of healing power. He's immune to a lot of different kinds of energy attacks, though he still is vulnerable to things like gases. You could probably poison him, though drowning apparently doesn't do it, which is kind of weird. Um, but super strong, but not hugely strong. Like there's a limit to what he can pick up and move and what he break. But it's still a very cool mid-tier power setting, and I think it's the perfect kind of power setting in my book for like a PC group of adventurers playing in a supers setting. Um, and I enjoyed the whole shtick of martial arts because, let's face it, back in the 1970s, martial arts were everywhere. And I grew up reading comics in the 1970s. That's when I got into comics. Remember, I was born in 64, so, at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s, that's when I was really starting to get into my comic books. And I loved the whole shtick of the martial arts, the wave of films that were hitting us in America, even though that kind of thing had been going on in the Asian markets forever. Um, but it's the 21st century. And I knew that the Iron Fist series hadn't done well, and I knew that it was still being played by a white guy, but I didn't really think about it too deeply because I had no interest in seeing the series and the new series that they had done. But I couldn't help but see the character, both in Defenders and in Jessica Jones, because he does pop up in these series. I mean, he interacts with Luke Cage and things like that. And no, was Jesse Jones? No, it was Luke Cage's series. Sorry, yeah, Luke Cage's series and Defenders. Um, the idea of the main character being a really super rich white guy, say like Batman or Tony Stark or Moon Knight, or you get the vibe, because the heroes were always powerful white straight dudes, because that was the audience that was reading the comics. They were being aimed at white, straight teens, with the assumption that all of the audience were these things. And they all figured that all of these kids wanted to grow up to be powerful, rich, white, straight dudes, which is not true. But back in the 70s, it's up completely acceptable for the main character of a story all about, Asian martial arts, Chinese martial arts, or Japanese martial arts, being a white guy. That was just, no one batted an eye at it. Nobody thought anything of that. But it's the 21st century. Why is a character dealing with the deep mysticism and cultural history of the martial arts of China or Japan being portrayed by a white guy? Now, you could have done the exact same storyline as you did with Danny Rand from the Defenders. Exactly the same. Not changing a beat. Just make him Chinese. That's it. His parents could have still been white. He could have still been raised in America. So let's face it, rich people like to adopt babies from around the world. Heck, there are stars that seem to collect them. So yeah, you could have had a rich couple, billionaires, adopt a Chinese baby, and they raise their Chinese baby to become the president of their billionaire corporation, and then their plane gets blown out of the sky, and the baby survives and is raised, in a Chinese monastery and becomes the Iron Fist. Absolutely believable. You didn't have to make it some pasty-faced white boy who is so boring. I think his middle name is Danny Bland Rand. And not to mention, he moves like a drunken hippo. He doesn't, the actor playing Daredevil, beautiful. He really does convey the athleticism of that character really well. But the Iron Fist dude, I didn't get it. It didn't seem to flow. It seemed to be forced. It just didn't look believable. Whereas the guy doing the work for Daredevil did. It worked. And then you have people like, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones who don't have martial arts skill, and they're just bruisers. And they played that well. They were bruisers. They punch things. They pick stuff up and they throw them or they swing them. They just break things until they win. Daredevil, Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, they're supposed to be graceful, grace in motion. They're supposed to be the height of martial arts prowess. Not to mention, the Iron Fist has got a mystical weapon built into his hand. Really darn cool. But I was deeply disappointed with the whole character of Danny Rand. I'm just like, wow. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but this is just horrible. I really didn't enjoy his character and anyone. There was no charisma, no vibe. Everybody else and all the other actors were able to convey things really well. The guy playing Stick did a good job. It was just the glaringly obvious fault in the whole storyline was this actor. I don't think he had the chops to play the character. And I don't know how he got the job. There had to have been better white people that could have done this. And I still baffle of why they didn't make this guy Chinese. It would have made perfect sense. And it would have been right in line with the fact that, it's a story about Asian culture. Why don't we make the guy Asian? That makes a lot more sense to me. And again, you could still do the same storyline, raised by rich white billionaires to become some, powerful CEO, but ends up becoming a mystical warrior because of the underhanded machinations of the hand. Of course, every time I heard them reference the hand, and I know the storyline. I read the Daredevil storylines of that era from the 80s and stuff. I know the story of the hand from first-hand experience. I couldn't help but hear the foot from TMNT. I'm like, that's the hand. I'm supposed to take them seriously. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed seeing these things, and I just didn't like the actor playing Danny Rand, Iron Fist. I also didn't know something else, and this may be slightly controversial of me to say, but Kristen Ritter plays Jessica Jones. Her last name's Ritter. I think his first name's Kristen. She is an attractive human. no questions asked. But as Jessica Jones, she is absolutely incredibly sexy. There's something about that character that when she puts that character on, it just works really, really well. Does it work? Because I've seen pictures of her in real life, and stuff, and I'm just like, yep, attractive person, not sexy, but Jessica Jones knocked it out of the park. So thoroughly enjoyed the character of Luke Cage. I think he's great. I've even used him, used his power set before in other situations. Just stripped it out of him and given it to somebody else because it was handy. Um, but yeah, highly recommended the character of Luke Cage by Mike Coulter. I really enjoyed his work. I think it was great to see it. I liked what they did with some of the storylines because his series was not overly saturated with supers, but there were still other metahumans, and they were still referencing the other metahuman events of the world. So that was cool. Um, and there was more of that in Defenders because it was more seeped in mysticism and things like that. Uh, and there's some of it in Jessica Jones, of course, because there are still other metahumans in the universe, both good and bad, and they do play a role in the series. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed Luke Cage, and I thoroughly didn't like Iron Fist. So let's hear your thoughts on this subject.